Recently I made a video about AMD's financials, and then more recently I made a video about RAM prices, which included a segment on OpenAI, but I skipped Nvidia's financials, which they released between those two videos. And my explanation is I thought the figures were rather dull. They're impressive, Nvidia has made absolute fortunes, but where's the news there? Or at least I thought the news was dull, but goodness me, was I wrong. And this gives me the ideal opportunity to play you a clip of Jensen giving his keynote at GTC in March of 2025, and then we can take a look at the controversy.
I said before that when Blackwell starts shipping in volume, you couldn't give hoppers away. I'm the chief revenue destroyer. My sales guys are going, oh no, don't say that.
To avoid any confusion, we're looking here at Q3 of financial year 2026, but as you can see, these figures are from November 2025. For some bizarre reason, Nvidia runs their financial year 1 year ahead of real time. And the numbers are absolutely enormous. Nvidia's revenue, $57 billion. The vast majority comes from the data center, and that of course means AI. And Nvidia's margins continue to be enormous. And you can see from this breakdown, it's all about data center with a bit of gaming. So you might wonder, why has Nvidia's share price been dropping, albeit from a massive high, but it's drifting downwards. And in particular, after those financials, it dropped, which is the opposite of what we might expect. There have been questions for months now about the bizarre circulation of money within the AI sector, and Nvidia is at the heart of those flows. But that does not appear to be the specific reason for Nvidia's recent travails. Nope, funnily enough, it's about an algorithm that apparently detected a monumental fraud. The idea of Nvidia being caught out by an AI algorithm is just too funny for words, but it seems to me that Michael Burry is a far more significant part of the story. Berry is asking some very important questions, such as the difference between judicious investment and wasting money on capital equipment such as GPUs without getting revenue in return. We've seen this happen many times over the years, in particular with the dot-com bubble, when vast amounts of fibre optics were laid for internet connections, which then generated no revenue whatsoever. In addition to that, Berry's asking some more specific questions. He's looking at the number of years that the hyperscaler companies take to depreciate their hardware, and he's noted that this has extended over recent years. For example, Meta back in 2020 depreciated their hardware over 3 years, and that's now risen to 5.5 years. Microsoft and Google also used to depreciate over 3 years. That's now become 6 years. Of course, there's no suggestion that depreciated hardware is immediately scrapped, but it would make little sense to scrap hardware before it has been depreciated, and the only option there would be to sell it on to another hyperscaler. So in that context, when we listen again to Jensen's comments about Hopper, you have to wonder, how is it possible for Nvidia to sell monumental quantities of hardware on a cadence of a single year?
In a reasoning model, Blackwell is 40 times the performance of Hopper. Straight up. I said before that when Blackwell starts shipping in volume, you couldn't give hoppers away. And this is what I mean. And this makes sense. If you're still looking to buy a hopper, don't be afraid. It's okay. But I'm the chief revenue destroyer. My sales guys are going, oh no, don't say that.
So to recap, Nvidia published their Q3 figures, which were absolutely stellar, and their share price dropped. And then I saw this post from Tae Kim, who recently wrote a comprehensive history of Nvidia called The Nvidia Way. And he was saying Nvidia should have published this in an 8K filing instead of just emailing a memo to Wall Street sell-side analysts. Eh? What? Turns out Nvidia had sent out a 7-page memo to financial analysts, but had not published it on their own website. It took a day or so, but I have a copy of the memo, and it looks like this. And you can see that Nvidia is rebutting 2 source documents, and it's addressing them point by point. Reasonably comprehensive, and it ends with some interesting information about depreciation of assets. And a day later, Michael Burry responded. And he's making the point, which is Nvidia's saying that they don't depreciate their assets over a certain period of time. And Burry's take is that that's completely irrelevant. He's not talking about Nvidia depreciating assets. He's talking about Nvidia's customers depreciating assets, i.e. the tens of billions of dollars of GPUs that they're buying from Nvidia. We also need to look again at that graphic about the circular flow of money around the AI industry. Michael Burry is asking the question, is this investment or expenditure? In other words, does it generate revenue? But we also need to consider, are these actually sales of hardware or are they more like transfers? The AMD deal with OpenAI talks about supplying graphics cards, but it also makes clear that OpenAI is going to be able to buy AMD stock at very low prices, provided certain metrics are hit. It sounds as though OpenAI might be getting free stock provided AMD's stock rises to predetermined levels. And then we have the recent deal between Nvidia, Microsoft and Anthropic. On the one hand, Anthropic is buying lots of graphics cards and it's going to use Microsoft's Azure cloud service. On the other hand, both Microsoft and Nvidia are investing in Anthropic. So who exactly is paying whom? The good news is the situation should be clearer in about 3 months' time when Nvidia announces their fourth quarter figures, as this is when Michael Burry's bet against Nvidia will either come to fruition or will crash and burn. In the meantime, it looks as though the wind is behind Jensen's sails. Personally, I don't much fancy betting against either of these guys.